everyone. I'm Traci Arieli, end of life doula and founder of Comforting Closure. Welcome to another episode. Before we begin, I want to share a story from my own family. Many years ago, my parents sat my brothers and me down, and they told us they had purchased long-term care insurance. They explained what it was and why they chose it. But what I remember most was how proud they were. They told us very directly, and this is a quote, "We don't want you kids changing our diapers someday." It was said with humor, but they meant it. Many years later, I realized that what they were really saying was that they had a plan. They wanted support if they needed care, and they wanted to protect their independence as long as possible. Because they had that conversation with us, I knew what long-term care insurance was. If they had never brought it up, I probably would not have looked into it myself. Most people do not hear about long-term care insurance until a crisis forces the conversation. Today, we're going to talk about long-term care, not death, not hospice, but the kind of care people often need for years, not just days or weeks. Many people assume someone else will handle this. Medicare, health insurance, hospice, a spouse, an adult child, but that is rarely the case. Costs add up. Coverage falls short. Families discover very quickly how unprepared they are. This conversation is not meant to scare you. It is meant to give you clear information about what long-term care really is, what it costs, and how planning can protect quality of life. My guest today is Raymond Levine, founder of Levine LTC Benefits. Raymond has spent decades helping families plan for long-term care shaped by his own experience with caregiving, illness, and loss. So grab a warm drink, find a comfortable seat, and join us for the conversation. Raymond, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Traci, and you're a wonderful spokesperson, an articulate spokesperson about the reasons and the need and the why of thinking about having a caregiving plan, which also coordinates to a life plan.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But I want to start with you. Why did long-term care insurance become your focus?
Like most people that get into this business or advocate for it, usually it's a personal experience. Sometimes it might be because if you're in the insurance business, it might say, "Oh, it's something. It's a good benefit to offer to people." But in my experience, like other people in this business, somewhere in our lives there was a caregiving issue, and for my wife and I, it was her parents, and they did not own long-term care benefits. They really weren't insurance buyers. Actually, my parents really weren't insurance buyers, um, but they needed care services. My wife's mother was the first, and then her father had cognitive illness and needed for 4 or 5 years caregiving benefits. So my wife said, and I had actually looked into it, and this was the sort of the heyday of a lot of people buying long-term care benefits. When you were 65, you started getting in the mail information about, oh, you should look into long-term care benefits. So a lot of people did. A lot of people did own it, and a lot of people have used it. So it was a personal experience. And then with my mother, it was a very long caregiving experience. She died a couple of years ago at 103, and she, as I said, my parents were not insurance buyers, but in the early 90s. My father was dying of heart disease, and that was the third long-term care issue. My mother was involved. So the Bar Association was offering long-term care benefits as part of their affinity program. And my mother was able to purchase it. My father couldn't because he was dying. He had it's known as a pre-existing condition. It sounds antiseptic, but they wouldn't accept him because he was uninsurable. But my mother got it, and she used it for 18 years.
Mm.
And that was, I mean, an extreme example, but and of all the different ones, starting off with, a few hours a week to eventually she needed a care 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the last couple of years of her life. And uh, she was affluent. She could have personally afforded it, but having the long-term care benefits, she was really happy. So that's a long answer to your short question.
Yeah.
How did I get into the business? And there's also something where in this podcast, really, I don't want to make, and you made it inspiring to say, look, things are going to happen to people, but you're always a lot better off if you have a plan or something in advance and you have the money. You have the funds to do it. And I was thinking about it. I want to honor your parents that they had the conversation with the kids, the children, the siblings,
Yep.
because a lot of parents don't tell their family about what kind of insurance they have, their finances, and the only time sometimes if there is a family that they find out is after there's a crisis, and that's the worst time, the worst situation to make decisions.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I'm very lucky because my parents, that was part of their education to us. In school, we don't learn about this. And so, of course, it was broader than just insurance. It was a lot of things that they taught us about budgeting and all of that. But I was very, very fortunate because I had never heard of long-term care insurance. No, most people haven't. And there is this assumption that, hey, insurance, Medicare, or my regular insurance is just going to take care of all this stuff. And there is a big surprise. They even, and we'll talk about this with hospice, and there are just so many myths. And so that financial strain, in our country, it is really unfortunate that we aren't going to be taken care of. The government isn't going to take care of us. The Medicare really isn't going to take care of a lot of our needs. And it is up to individuals. And I've seen individuals that have planned. And I'm not saying you have to be rich to put a plan in place, because you do not. But I've seen people with a plan and people without a plan. And the quality of life, the difference is huge. It is really, really huge. So I want to start off and talk about what long-term care insurance is and why do people need it, including like the care that it provides and doesn't provide.
Well, there's no requirement, unlike, auto insurance and home insurance, there's no requirement that you need a long-term care plan. There's no requirement that you even need to plan for caregiving. But what what do I do? What I do is I'm the money person. I'm the person whether you come to me or other sources, that I will provide, with a plan that you have the money so that you can make decisions about your caregiving services. Now, you don't have to do it, and you can wait for a caregiving issue to happen and then start planning. And you don't always make the best decisions when you're when you're in a crisis, but you do have other options. You can rely on your family if you have a family, and if you like them and if they like you, you can, or you can rely maybe on social services. Maybe it's reliable, maybe it isn't. But what I've learned is Americans don't like to. They always say they want to make their own decision. They want to determine their own destiny. They want to be in charge of their life. Well, when you need in a caregiving situation, if you're fortunate enough, you've done the right things, you've been pleasant enough, you have advocates. You really need an advocate. It makes a difference. I mean, I'll give you a quick transition story. When my father fell off a horse and broke his arm and his hip, and he's an educated man. He was a lawyer. He taught in law school. He wrote books. He was a learned fellow. And I remember when he was in the emergency room, he actually admitted my mother. I said, "Thank goodness you're there as the advocate," because they were asking questions, and he was so out of it. He really couldn't answer it intelligently, but my mother could. So you need an advocate, but what long-term care benefits, whatever it is you decide to do, if you decide to self-insure or self-fund, whether you have the assets, whether you want to rely on family or friends, whether you want to rely on social services, there are aspects to it that might be useful. There are other aspects to say that it's then somebody else that's making the rules, or somebody else saying, this is what we can do, this is what we'll pay for, this is a schedule. If you have a caregiving plan, and I didn't say having long-term care insurance, if you have a long-term, a caregiving plan that might be funded by long-term care benefits, then you and the family can make personal choices of where do you want your care. If you're set up, you can have it at home, and it can be a great situation if your home has the modifications and you've set things up where you can stay at home and you have the support system. Or you can be in a care center. Nothing wrong with a care center if you're in the right care center, and it will give you the attention and the care that you need. That you need. The second aspect of it is who will be your caregivers. If you really, if your family says, I want to volunteer, I want to do, of course, when they say volunteering, you're volunteering, but you're also, the person that's volunteering is also self-funding. May not necessarily be a good situation because may have family and they have a career. If they have to deter that, it's an economic cost. People don't think about that in caregiving. They'll say, "Oh, I did this wonderful thing and it's noble," but there's an economic cost. There's also physical costs and also mental health. There's a lot of depression with caregivers. And actually, I'll tell another side story because I don't want to forget it. Is that when we think of caregiving, we always think of those that need the caregiving. And I'm an advocate of, if you're recognize the caregivers too. If you're a friend or family, don't just say, how's Ed or how's Jane. Ask the person, how are you doing? What's your situation? Hey, let's plan where we'll get somebody to take care of the person. Yeah.
It's really interesting that you bring up the caregivers because most people, as I said, believe that their adult children will be there for them, or their or their spouse. And I always tell people you could either be a husband or wife, or you could be a son or daughter, or you could be a caregiver. It's very difficult. You cannot be both. I have never seen people, the relationship changes so much once you become a caregiver versus a husband. And I'll be really honest, your spouse needs you as a husband or wife. They do not need you as a caregiver. And because there is, or they might need you as a caregiver, but they need you as a husband or wife, or they need you as a son or daughter. Once you step up and become a caregiver, your relationship will completely change. And it's not that you don't want to do it. It is just, it's so difficult. It is such a responsibility, and it is such hard, thankless, tiring work. You can't have a full-time job and be a caregiver. So there's your loss of income right there. The reality is it is extremely difficult, and the funding and the support that is needed to be a caregiver is not there in our country. And so when you have something like long-term care insurance, your loved ones don't have to step into that role, at least full time, or they maybe not even at all. And so you are not only taking care of yourself, but you're taking care of those people around you. So as far as what the actual long-term care insurance is, I know it does you could get caregivers. Does it cover stuff like if I have to go into a residential community? Does it cover that usually? Does it cover, please, and I don't think people realize, and we're going to talk about the cost of care in a few minutes, but what does it actually cover for people?
Well, long-term care benefits, let's go back 35, 40 years briefly. I won't be the story, is that a lot of people think of long-term care insurance as nursing home insurance. That was the original concept, is that you weren't at home when you needed care. You were transferred to a nursing home, assisted living, cognitive care. That's what's in people. It's almost indelible in people's minds. It would be helpful if everybody's brain got rebooted to say it's expanded. Most people want to stay at home if you have the right situation. Home modifications, I mentioned before, if you have family and friends, or that you have the resources that you can hire a licensed care person, or depending on the plan, because there are two kinds of plans. It's a reimbursement, which reimburses either a home care or at a care center. But there are plans where it's a money plan. They call it indemnity, but keep things where people know more about money than they do about the word money than they do about indemnity. So let's say it's a money plan. What is a money plan? Well, a money plan means that you have a plan that, let's say you have a $5,000 a month benefit, that the insurance company each month will wire transfer or send a check, but mostly wire transfer money to your account. And instead of having to either use a licensed care services, you can use the money to hire either a licensed care, or you can hire family and friends. You can hire anyone. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could also use it, for other expenses. But if that's what the benefits are for, you can use it. Use it for your caregiving benefits. So it gives you more flexibility. So those are the two ways that it's paid. And then there are a variety of plans, and it also depends on, for example, in the state of California, they don't offer short-term care plans, which just outrages me. Did I say that? Because states say, well, we don't want people to be on Medicaid because it's in a deficit, and it overwhelms the system. Short-term care plans, by definition, is usually 1 or 2 year plans, but it can be great. I mean, it can be as good or better than some of the other plans, but it isn't offered in California or Washington State. And so, in a way, there's a hypocrisy. The people will say, we don't want people on plans, but then they don't always offer in each state. So each state, some plans are, you have different plans in different states because of it's not a national, it's by each state insurance commissioner what they approve, what they don't. But you can get traditional plans, which is what it first began. You can now get hybrid plans. You can get short-term care plans. If you have very little health and you have assets not needed for retirement or anything else, you can transfer it over to an annuity type of long-term care plan, which has a rider, and you're leveraging your money. So I'll get out of the financial thing. You can multiply your money. Every dollar you put in, you'll get $2 or $3 back. And there are tax benefits to it, but it will help you pay for your care. There are other ways you can do it too, but let me just stop there, and you can, because I could just go on, I could go on and on about the different things. So you may have, whatever questions you have that you want me to be more specific.
So what I'm hearing is it's dependent on the plan. There's a variety of them, but there are, the plans really, it covers, these plans help you or provide the means to take and give you control of your care and what you want. If you want to move out to a residential community, to an assisted care community, it will help with that. If you want to stay at home, which most people do, it will help get you your care that you need at home. And you gave that great example of your mom who lived past 100, God love her. And she had the care, 18 years of care. I mean, that's fantastic. So it gives you the options. It gives you the control where you will be you'll be able to remain independent as possible, and make decisions that meet what you want.
Well, there are three things. Actually, there's a third. I used to have two terms, but you bring up something interesting that when I say there are three things that I don't care what culture. I don't think, it doesn't matter how affluent you are, how educated, how good looking you are. There are three things that most people value. I know I do. One is I value attention. I like it when if I want service that I have attention. And when you need caregiving, whether it's the family or those in need, you want the attention. You really do. And if you don't believe me, go into a restaurant and somebody doesn't come up and ask you for, a beverage or you can order, and you find the behavior of some people is outrageous. But the point is attention. The second is when you're not well, if you don't have the attention, you feel invisible. And people don't like to feel invisible, especially when they want something. They just don't want to feel invisible. I know, and again, I don't. And the third thing, and this is, and I remember this even when I was in Vietnam, what happened to people. You don't want to feel vulnerable, and when you're hurt, when you're in pain, when you need, when you have an illness, you're vulnerable. And it doesn't matter how rich you are or what you're. If you feel vulnerable, it affects everything. It affects your mental health, it affects your endorphins, amygdala. If you feel vulnerable, and I'll put the word out, you're afraid. And it's okay to be afraid, but what you have to also say is, if I'm afraid, what am I going to do about it? Or are people going to help me so I won't be afraid? Because I don't want to be afraid. And this is why one of me is I advocate, what I do is that I don't want people to be afraid between the time, whatever, whether they recover from whatever their issue is or they don't, is who wants to die afraid or in their family? I don't want to. So if you don't want, if you want to change the word from vulnerable, is that people don't want to feel afraid. I don't.
Now, as far as there's a lot of myths and about Medicare and health insurance and what it actually covers and what it doesn't. And I think, I'll use hospice as an example, even though it's not an example it's not the main example by any means. But many people are under the false assumption that hospice is 24 by 7. And it's a big surprise when they realize that, yeah, you'll have the medical team, the hospice nurse show up 1, 2, maybe 3 times a week for an hour at a time. And that's it. And then it's up to you and your family to take care of your loved one who is bedbound for the rest of the time. When a person is sick, and this is not just people who are older. You might be in your 40s, get into a car accident, and have to go through, physical therapy or be bedbound for months. And people think that all of that extra help is going to be covered. It's not. You need someone to take care of you. There's not going to be around the clock care. You need help getting up to shower or go to the bathroom. That's up to you. Insurance isn't covering that. What else what do you find that people walk in and think are covered? Yeah, they think they're going to be okay, and it's a huge surprise to them.
That's the thing, is they're surprised because they haven't looked into it. Most people don't think about, through their life about caregiving until it happens. I mean, even being a parent, I remember, because I'm so old, the Dr. Seuss was almost the book, for parents, how to raise children. Of course, in a way, it was different. After my parents were the GI generation, and after World War II, there were so many kids, and you had everybody. you had a lot of people that were helping each other. There was a lot more support system, and if you saw it in the programs of the 50s, there's a lot more stay-at-home moms. Now in the 21st century, parenting is different and caregiving is different, because you might where 50, 60 years ago, you might have had more of a community where more families stayed in the community. Now people are scattered everywhere. There isn't that kind of community. Um, so I think people have gotten away from thinking about other than, see, people think that a lot of social services is entitlement. Like I'm entitled. Well, there's a misunderstanding about it, is that you might be eligible. I'm a veteran. I might be eligible for things. That doesn't mean I'm entitled. I might be eligible for veterans benefits, which will, in the right circumstances and you qualify, will pay for your caregiving services. I think sometimes at home, mostly, it's in a veterans facility, but they'll make the rules if you qualify. But the point is that I may be eligible, but people think that they're entitled. You're not entitled. You're just eligible, and then you have to show proof depending on whatever it is that you're asking for. And again, I go back to, if you want to make your own choices, then have a plan in advance. And let me just also be authentic about it. There's nothing fun about this. It's not even fun to say, oh, gee, I want to think about a caregiving plan. I mean, I much rather plan for my vacation. Much rather plan, buy something that, is fun. And, but let's get back to what's really important is from time to time, it's also useful to say, how do I invest in myself? Because I'm the asset. I produce everything else. I produce income. I produce personal relationships. I produce love. I produce intimacy. I, the individual, there's nothing else. Artificial intelligence isn't going to do it. Some plan isn't going to do it. If we still have, not robotics, not artificial intelligence, it's if we have human beings, we are people, and there are things that we need to do for ourselves. I didn't say you have to be selfish. I'm saying that you need to be say, if I'm a human being, what do I mean to myself? And if I love others and I want others to love me, what kind of plan am I going to have in advance? What kind of estate plan am I going to have? What kind of caregiving plan am I going to have? And how am I in time? And what legacy do I want to leave to my family or things that I care about, whether it's education or religion or whatever. What do I want to leave behind? Do I want to live a life of significance, or do I want to live a life of I'm just invisible?
Well, what you bring up you used the term investing in myself. This is an investment. So I want to talk numbers here, and in two ways. One, I want to start off and talk about how expensive home care help or any help, if you're living in an assisted living facility, how much that cost really, what does that cost? And then the second part of this equation is how much usually is long-term care insurance, because it is an investment. Believe me, I know. So let's talk about both those things. Let's start off and talk about the hourly rate, let's say, of home health care in the United States. And this is a really interesting conversation. I've used the example of my parents having long-term care insurance. They've done the math. And then my in-laws do not. They are like your parents. They do not believe in insurance. Or not your parents, but your wife's parents. They never believed in insurance. And so they believe that they'll be able to hire just someone, non-medical, living in the community, $15. I don't even know what they're as far as cost. But the reality is This is really expensive. What are you finding? I'll tell you what I found as far as costs. But what are you finding as far as in-home care health costs?
Well, the default rate used to be saying, $15 to $20 an hour, but then I don't think in this podcast you want to get into political, is that a lot of times you think of caregivers as being people that, are minimum wage, because I mean, 50 is minimum wage. And so you're hiring minimum wage people. But if you really want the attention and you want the quality, it's well over $20 an hour. I'll tell you, with my mother, with her caregivers, it's $50, $60 an hour.
Yeah, that is more. People are paying cheap right now, 12,000 a month for healthcare. That healthcare in the home. If you have a person, we have the silver tsunami. I think all of us have heard that we're starting at the beginning of this silver tsunami, and there aren't enough healthcare workers. And so what I've been finding are, rates are higher, but people are, and this is at home care, or this is if you live in a residential community, that cost to live in the residential, that room and board does not include care. So that's an additional 12, the cheapest I found, and I've talked to people in Texas, people in Kentucky. $8,000 a month, Kentucky. And this does not include healthcare. This is just the care, that a person might need, showering, we're getting to a point, there are more people with dementia, which at some point that's 24-hour care. Heart disease, different cancers. And you need people to help you do everything. There's at some point in your life where you're going to need people to help you bathe, to, as my parents say, change your diaper, to do a whole host of things that you don't want your loved ones to do. The cost of that could bankrupt you.
Well, it's also important too, I mean, it isn't just the cost, but also the quality of care, because you also want, whether it's in home or care center, what those that need caregiving, those that will be responsible, are they safe? Are they secure? Because you're not just doing, all the daily activities of eating, bathing, dressing. There's a lot more to this caregiving stuff that people don't realize. There's administrative stuff, there's organization stuff, and when I mean by organization, you got to do the schedule, you got to do the planning, you got to make sure about doctor's appointments, who showed up where, who's canceled, who's delayed, and in healthcare, just like you're spending a lot of time waiting. And waiting is expensive. So there are a lot of, caregiving, administrative things. And you're also, depending on, how far along somebody is in caregiving, you're taking care of their financial situation too. So uh, and, there's also something, actually, I don't bring it up as much as, is that you're also dealing with your emotions, whether those that need caregiving and those that are responsible. There's an emotional toll on it. We always talk about, physical, can you lift somebody? Okay. The things you can do with that. But it's a lot. It's one thing, you can always maybe get somebody to transfer you one place to the other. But it's a lot more complicated when you have to deal with your emotions, because you're dealing now with, fear, you're dealing with depression, you're tired, you're frustrated. There are a lot of things, and these are things that, also is I'll use the term, it's silent. People don't bring it up unless, you're in a group of care, people in caregiving, and there's support, there are support groups, either you can go in person, or a lot of them you can do remotely. And these are things that happen on both sides. It isn't just those that are ill, but you're dealing, and even the caregivers. If it isn't asked, I'm going to bring it up. Is that whoever is your caregiver or caregivers, they're not the help, and be kind to them if you can. And if you haven't learned how to be kind to people, learn how. Take a YouTube course. Do something. Learn how to be kind to your caregivers, because they are trying to help you. Be kind.
It's a tough, tough job being a caregiver. It is emotionally a very, very tough job. And I have to, anyone who's in those roles, from nurses to, doctors, home healthcare aid workers, and something that a thankless job in a lot of instances. Let's move on and talk about long-term care insurance cost of that. What can people expect?
Whether you like the idea, you don't like the idea, is that at some point, if you read about it, is be curious enough to say, let schedule with your financial planner, your wealth advisor, long-term care person. At least have the conversation, be informed, because sometimes it doesn't happen right away. It's a process. You sort of have to sort of think about it and say, and at some point to say, when will I do it? When will I have a caregiving plan? But the best, if you want to be informed, have the conversation about long-term care benefits with your financial advisor, your wealth advisor, your attorney, accountant, family. At least bring up the topic. What should we do? Because that's the informative stage of this caregiving thing. And let me give it to something that most people know: retirement planning or building up wealth. You don't it takes a lifetime of work to do that. You got to get in the habit, and you got to learn how to do it. It doesn't just happen. So you got to inform yourself, and you have to decide, if I'm going to invest for wealth or retirement, how am I going to do it? What's the plan? And some people can do it on their own, and other people, and I need advice. I need to talk to people about it. So when it comes to if I am talking to somebody and the first thing I always say is, how much does it cost? Now, I can be the sarcastic person. It'll cost you $350,000.75. And they'll say, well, you mean that's the plan? I said, no, that may be your caregiving expenses over a period of time. Or I might say, look, and I'll be honest, said, I don't know how much it will cost for a plan until I know what you want your caregiving to do. What do you want your caregiving to do? Where do you want your caregiving? What's your financial situation? What is your health? Because it's all based on health. Just the same as, you want to get a car insurance. What's your driving record? You want to get a credit card? What's your credit score? You want to buy a house? What's your credit score? So a health assessment is a credit score. So in order for me to know what to advise, what to recommend, there are certain facts I need to know. Something about your health, what you want to accomplish, what state you live in,
How old
and
you are?
how and your age, because like retirement planning, the older you are, the more expensive it is, the premiums, and
So,
also your health. Go on.
so let me ask you another way, because I know how much I paid for it, and it wasn't cheap. But I was in a financial situation at that point where I could afford it. And when I mean it wasn't cheap, I'm talking about a down payment to a home. It wasn't cheap. It was very expensive. So I will be. What are the what financial bracket do you need to, I can't see, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that people who aren't middle class, upper middle class and above, that this is really who this is geared for. And people who are middle class, lower middle class, people who are, who are not salaried, not, that they're not going to be able to afford this. Is that true, or am I incorrect in saying that?
There's financial viability. You have to have cash flow or income, not targeted towards all the other things that you have. The term is disposable income. Do you have additional income? And it's the same with taking a vacation. You have disposable income to pay for a vacation or for other things. So yes, you need to be in a situation where you have uh, um, money not needed for all the other things that you can use to own long-term care benefits. However, there are ways you can do this. Is that ask if the family is aware of the situation, your family can contribute to a long-term care premium benefit. They family, friends, um, they can do that. Or depending on the city, if you want to do a reverse mortgage, where that could also get you funds to pay for a care plan. But the reality is, if you have no additional disposable income to pay for it, then that's what Medicaid was designed to do, or other local social services, or if you live in a community, uh, uh, that you can have friends and family or neighbors, that you have group caregiving. And there are communities, and there've been stories, and I think in Boston and others, longtime communities where people can help each other. But yeah, owning a long-term care plan comes with a premium. I will never do it. Comes with a price tag. A lot of things come with a price tag, but yes, it does.
And we
So
made, I remember we made decisions. We don't have children, so life insurance, long-term care insurance, like we made decisions about what we can go without and what we could. So it wasn't like, oh, a fly, yeah, sure, we'll just, I don't think that anyone, even people who do have money, kind of take this lightly. But we did the math and we said, we know, hopefully we're going to grow old, and doing the math, it's either we pay this or we lose our shirts, lose our home, because we're going to need long-term care insurance. And we're not going to have children to take care of us or anyone else to really, take care of us. So there was a reason, and I think that the everyone's situation is different, and I think that people who don't have children or who uh, are living as solo aging, as solo agers, that situation is very different than someone who has children who they believe, and you should have a conversation with your adult children, will take care of them.
families, and sometimes older generation, they're more secretive, or they're more quiet about it. They don't want to, and there are examples of people that they don't want to tell their children they have other children, or they've had other families, or there are a lot of secrets that people have and will have about their lives. But if you're a functioning family, I didn't say a healthy family, but a functioning family, it really helps, especially if you do have, children or adopted children, whatever the family relationship may be. That's why when I ask somebody, I said, I don't say, "Are you married?" I say, "Do you have a spouse or partner?" Because I don't know, and I don't know, are you the same gender? So I don't want to presume, and also I don't want to. When I'm having the conversation about long-term care benefits, I don't want to talk about the benefits. I want to talk about you. I want to know who you are, what your financial circumstances, what you want to accomplish, what your health assessment. Because I'm not going to suggest something to you if I don't think things line up. Because I'll say, look, I just don't think this is going to work for you, and why, and my suggestion. It isn't the appropriate benefit for everybody, or if I give suggestions and they say, "Oh, it's a good idea," we'll talk about it. Like having children or other people contribute. If they're willing to do it, everybody realizes it's important. But I don't come in with pre-existing thing of I'm going to figure out, how to sell you a plan or suggest a plan if you can't afford it. If you can't, or if you can, we'll adjust it to say, look, maybe it's not as robust. I mean, robust meaning maybe it doesn't offer as much in benefits as maybe a plan if you're putting more in premium. So let's design something that at least it'll give you maybe a couple of years. At least you have something. At least you have time. And that's the appropriate way. And let me rephrase that. It's not. It's the way I do it. It's the way that I think is helpful to people. That at least they have something. It's like you don't have to have the biggest house on the street, but if you have a house that you like and you know how to maintain it, you can sometimes have the best looking house, the best yard, the best interior. It may not be, it might be 1,300 square feet versus everybody else that has 3,300 square feet, but it might be the best looking house on the street because you love it, you maintain it, and it's your house.
See, I know that you've lived in California because that square footage. I know. So, I love the way that you work with your clients. What should people look for when they are looking for someone to work with and to get long term care insurance? What are some of the factors people should look at, and what are some of the red flags?
Trust. The first thing that in any relationship, or when especially if you're buying a big ticket item, and this is a big ticket item, or but it's also relationships too. Do you trust the person? Do you like them? Have you gone through the qualifications? Not only just how long they've been in that's you might be in something for a long time. It doesn't necessarily mean you learn. You've that you've improved. You might be the same person, type of person you were 20 years ago, and you really haven't progressed. But do you trust them? And it's fun, and look up their background or ask them questions and see, do you feel comfortable? Because you're going to own these plans a long, long time if you do it right. And I always say you need the right plan at the right place at the right time. So do you trust the person? Now, how do you find that? Well, if you have, a wealth advisor, financial planner that, and bring up that conversation if they have it, is say, look, I'm thinking about this long-term care insurance, what should I do? Some advocate it, some don't. Some, will just say, well, you got enough, you don't need it. I don't think that's helpful. Because and or the client needs to say, well, if I'm in this and I need 8, 10,000, is my income producing enough, or am I going to am I going to get in financial trouble? Because some will just do it because they don't want to deal with it or bring it up, or they think it's complicated. Long-term care insurance is not complicated. It's complicated with the plans and setting things up and the health setting. There's a certain amount of difficulty in that, but the point is, who do you trust, or talk to? I mean, if you have friends or family, or if people, your friends and family, say, should I get long-term care benefits? I mean, you can give them, say, who you spoke to, who you purchased from, what you like, what you didn't. And so, you and your husband are good examples of references of being influencers, who to talk to. But their plan is going to be different from your plan. Their circumstances are going to be different from your circumstances. But it goes back to trust, competence, and so those are the things that I mean I do too. I mean I buy things, and I need people to get advice. Do I trust them? But when it comes to well, what is this stuff going to cost? What's this caregiving? On my website, you can go to the upper left corner, and then you can do a link, and you put in your lifestyle, it'll give you an idea of, how long you think you're gonna, that you may be alive, and it'll go into what your caregiving expense might be. And you can put in and say, look, I've got 100,000, 200 I could spend for caregiving, but it might, but it'll say, but you have a deficit of 300,000, 400,000 based on, various factors. So you can visualize it. One thing is when you talk about, insurance, it's insurance. But if you visualize, say, look, what happens, when you physically need something like health insurance. So you'll say, what happens, who pays when you go to the doctor? Well, you can visualize that, but you can't visualize health insurance, but you can visualize what happens. The same as, when you're dying, you can visualize, certain things that are happening. You go from active to that you need care. You, that you visualize that. And so it's visualizing, what do you want your caregiving to do? If you have, I mean, sometimes it might be, what's your budget? And if it's too low or too, sometimes it's interesting. Sometimes people go on the really high side, and I'll say, well, here's good news. It isn't gonna cost that much. Sometimes, so it might be the low way, but whatever it is. I mean, if somebody says I have no budget, or I'll do $20 a month, I'll say, well, there is a plan if you're willing to come up to 95 that you can get for home care. But if they're not even willing to deal with that, if that it isn't in the budget, then I'll suggest, if you're a veteran, here's what to look for. So I'll make other suggestions. There is no, it's like when you go into and you want an estate plan, if it's a competent attorney, they're not going to say, well, you need a will and you need a trust, and it's going to cost you 25,000 to do all the. I mean, they're going to do a questionnaire. They want to find out about what assets you have, what you want to do, and then they'll say, well, my fee to do this is whatever it is, the fee, and then you can decide, if you want to go through that estate plan.
What's the best time in a person's life to start looking at long-term care insurance? I know that you were saying back in the 80s and 90s, it was 65 and older. People were really getting onto the long-term care insurance bandwagon. What is it today? What's ideal?
If if you're with a company that offers a long-term care plan, whether they pay for some of it or not, it's a good deal, especially if you're in your 20s or 30s. It's a really good deal because a lot of times it can cost you, maybe 40, $50 a month, $50 a month, maybe even less. Um, and it's portable. You can take it with you. Or if they don't, and you've had some semblance of consciousness about caregiving for the future, or you've been in it, is get the company plan because it's portable. And then even if you think that it's still not enough, you can then purchase additional. It's called stacking, but you can purchase additional benefits to the plan, or you can add to it if you want another word for it. You can add to it. But ask your company, do they have a long-term care plan? Because the earlier you can get it, you're in the best health you're hopefully ever going to be. You're in the youngest you're ever going to be. So what you're doing is whenever you buy, you're buying time, just like retirement or asset planning. Is the more, as you put money in and you have, whatever growth, whether it's interest rate growth or equity growth, you're buying time. Go to a plant store and look at plants. If you want an inexpensive plant that costs, 25 cents, you buy, the plant where you could sort of see, whatever's coming up. But if you want to buy a plant, or something that, is 15 years old, it might cost $1,000. What's the difference? You're buying time.
Raymond, I'd like to thank you so much for being on the show today. I appreciate you sharing your professional knowledge and your personal perspective with us. For those listening who want to learn more or connect with you, where's the best place for them to find you and reach out?
Well, you can go to my website, www.lavineltcins.com, levineltcins.com, or we can have the two-way conversation. Call me on my phone, 253 275-6091. I'm licensed in a number of states, but if you call from a state that I'm not licensed, I can refer you to a competent, trusted person to have the conversation.
Great. And
And I'm also on social media, go ahead.
I will definitely put that phone number and your website and or on the description of this episode so people can find it. Listeners, long-term care planning can bring up fear. This is normal, but planning is really about clarity. It helps you understand what care actually looks like, what it costs, and who carries the responsibility when there is no plan. This is not only a financial conversation. It is a quality of life conversation. And one honest conversation today can spare a family years of stress later. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please comment below or reach out to me directly. And if you found this conversation to be helpful, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. This is Traci Arieli from Comforting Closure, wishing you peace and comfort in your journey. Until next time, take care.